For over 10,000 years, the dire wolf has been extinct. Fossil remains such as teeth and bones have provided scientists with most of what is known about the species, but no living specimen has existed in the modern era until now. In early 2025, 3 genetically engineered wolf pups were born in a wildlife facility in the United States. They were named Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi. These animals are not ordinary wolves. They were created through gene editing techniques designed to replicate the traits of the extinct dire wolf. The project was led by Colossal Biosciences, a company founded in 2021 that specializes in genetic engineering and de-extinction technologies. The organization employed more than 130 scientists for this project. Their goal was not to clone a dire wolf from ancient DNA, which is impossible due to the lack of viable cells, but to reconstruct the genome using the DNA of modern gray wolves as a base. The result was first successful births of the animals that carry selected physical and behavioral traits of the dire wolf. The facility where they are being raised has not been publicly disclosed to protect the animals from disturbance. However, footage and data released by the company show that the animals exhibit physical characteristics and instincts that differ significantly from domestic dogs and even modern wolves. This marks the first time in the history that a large extinct predator has been brought back through genetic engineering, and it has opened new discussions in both scientific and ethical fields about the future of de-extinction technology. On October 1st, 2024, the first 2 pups came into the world. A few months later, a 3rd pup joined them. All 3 were born through planned cesarean sections, delivered by a surgical team inside Colossal's animal care facility. The mothers, not dire wolves, large, healthy, domestic hound mixes, chosen for their size and calm nature. As newborns, they resembled domestic puppies, but their size hinted at something more. By the time they reached 6 months, they were nearly 1.2 meters long and already weighed over 80 pounds. But even more striking was their behavior. While normal puppies run to humans for belly rubs and affection, Romulus and Remus did the opposite. They kept their distance. They flinched at approach. Even the handlers who had raised them from day one couldn't get too close. It was clear these were not dogs. Their instincts, even at this early age, were wild, untouched, ancient. One day, while the pups were being weighed, a vet technician began humming a melody from The Little Mermaid. As her voice rose and fell, both turned toward her and began to howl. It was the first time in over 10,000 years that such a howl had been heard, a sound from the Ice Age echoing in the modern lab. To bring back a species that vanished millennia ago, you need more than bones. You need its genetic blueprint. The journey began with 2 ancient fossils. One was a 13,000-year-old tooth discovered in Sheridan Pit, Ohio. The other, even older, a 72,000-year-old ear bone unearthed in American Falls, Idaho. These samples preserved in the museum collections became the key to unlocking the dire wolf's genome. Inside Colossal's labs, scientists extracted ancient DNA from the bones and set out to analyze it. But the challenge was immense. Unlike cloning, which creates an identical copy from living tissue, there is no living dire wolf to clone. The species had no surviving gene pool. So the team took a different path. They chose a living relative, the gray wolf, and using its genome as a base, they edited 14 specific genes, making just 20 targeted changes. It may sound small, but those edits produced massive results. Their white coats, broader skulls, larger teeth, stronger jaws, more masculine legs, and even their distinct howling patterns all emerged from those gene edits. These were not random traits. They were carefully chosen characteristics that reflected the known anatomy and behavior of dire wolves. To make the cloning process safer and more efficient, Colossal avoided using tissue samples. Instead, they isolated endothelial progenitor cells from the blood of modern gray wolves. These special cells, which help form blood vessels, were easier to work with and less invasive to collect. Once edited, the DNA was inserted into denucleated ova, egg cells from their own DNA removed. From there, 45 engineered embryos were created in the lab. Each embryo was implanted into a carefully selected surrogate dog. Of those 45, only 3 led to successful full-term pregnancies. Bringing back an extinct species isn't just a technical challenge, it's a philosophical and ethical one. Colossal Biosciences doesn't claim to have resurrected direwolves in the purest sense. Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi are not exact genetic replicas pulled from ancient tissue. Instead, they are engineered approximations, grey wolves whose DNA was edited to reflect traits of the direwolf species. And while that distinction may seem minor, it's at the heart of an ongoing debate. Have we truly brought the direwolf back, or created something new? Colossal prefers the term De-Extinction, a word that evokes possibility but also raises questions. Because while the company celebrates the birth of these engineered wolves, it hasn't released peer-reviewed studies to the public yet. There is no published genomic analysis to confirm how close these creatures truly are to the ancient Canis dirus. Still, Colossal remains confident. They argue that the technology itself, whether or not the animals are perfect replicas, has enormous potential. The same tools used to reconstruct direwolves could one day help prevent modern extinctions, starting with species on the brink, like the red wolf. And they've already taken action. Using similar techniques, Colossal had cloned 4 red wolves, helping to inject genetic diversity into a dangerously shrinking population. These efforts are supported by discoveries of ghost alleles, traces of red wolf DNA found in coyote-like populations along the coasts of Louisiana and Texas. From this hidden reservoir, Colossal has begun crafting what it calls the first ghost wolves. It's a stunning vision, one where the tools of genetic engineering aren't just about recreating the past, but safeguarding the future. But not everyone agrees with the direction. Many biologists warn that cloning, especially with wild species, carries serious risks: miscarriages, birth defects, weakened immune systems, organ malformations, and psychological suffering due to isolation. Even if these creatures survive, can they live meaningful, natural lives, especially if confined to a fenced enclosure for the rest of their existence? Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi roam across 2,000 acres. That may sound vast, but to a predator adapted to range across hundreds of miles, even that space could feel like a cage. The direwolf may have captured headlines, but for Colossal Biosciences, it's only the beginning. This Texas-based startup, founded in 2021, has grown rapidly, now employing over 130 scientists, and its ambitions stretch far beyond canines. Their ultimate goal: to reverse extinction itself. Next on their list, the woolly mammoth, an icon of the Ice Age. The woolly mammoth vanished roughly 4,000 years ago. But Colossal believes it can recreate a version of the mammoth by editing the genes of its closest living relative, the Asian elephant. They've already copied mammoth DNA and inserted it into mice, producing what the company calls a woolly mouse, a tiny creature with accelerated fat metabolism and a thick golden coat, mimicking mammoth traits. It might sound whimsical, but this experiment was a critical proof of concept. Colossal now plans to edit 85 different genes in elephant cells to introduce features like cold tolerance, shaggy fur, and extra fat layers. So far, 25 genes have been successfully edited, and the team is aiming to produce mammoth embryos by the end of 2026. If all goes to plan, the first calf could be born in 2028. Of course, this new mammoth won't be an exact replica. As Colossal's chief science officer, Beth Shapiro explains, it's more accurate to call them elephants engineered to express mammoth traits. But if it looks like a mammoth, behaves like a mammoth, and passes those traits to its offspring, what then is the difference? It is not just about restoring the past for spectacle. The company argues that these cold-adapted giants could play a crucial ecological role in the Arctic tundra, helping them maintain grasslands and combat climate change by reducing permafrost thawing. Colossal is also reviving efforts to bring back the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, a marsupial predator that went extinct in the 20th century. On a quiet patch of land, tucked far away from human eyes, a sound once lost for 10,000 years rises again. Not from an old recording, not from the pages of a textbook, but from the throats of three living creatures, Romulus, Remus and Khaleesi. It's a howl that belonged to the dire wolf, a species the Earth hasn't heard since before the rise of civilizations. Now that sound prices the air once more, not as an echo, but as something alive, breathing, growing, becoming. And yet, this is not just a story about wolves. It's a mirror that reflects the power we now hold, the ability not only to understand life, but to reshape it, to rewind time in a language of genes. Some may see this as redemption, humankind's attempt to heal what it once destroyed. Others may see it as hubris, a dangerous game of control played with the building blocks of nature. Maybe it's both. The scientists at Colossal aren't just reviving extinct species, they are testing the boundaries of what it means to be a guardian of Earth's diversity, in a time when that diversity is rapidly disappearing. But the truth is, we are still writing this story. Because the real question isn't whether we can bring species back from extinction, it's whether we can build a world that deserves them. A world where they are not caged, observed and studied, but understood, respected, and maybe someday welcomed home. And perhaps that's the most powerful thing about the return of the direwolf, not just that it came back, but that it made us stop and ask ourselves, what kind of future are we really creating?